Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill, spoonful of sugar, or the newly introduced tier of the medicine going down and get some fabulous swag for your life and make it better. We also have a brand new website after about 2+ years of doing this and finally being a grown-up. And we got a website. It's going to be thebittertruth.info. Because .com was $50,000, and I'm not paying $50,000. So there you go. But my guest today is the vice presidential candidate. We're the Green Party nominee with Howie Hawkins. She's a labor organizer who actually has a day job, which is awesome because most of us do. So she can understand and empathize with the issues that we go through as normal people. She's a professional truck driver. She ran as a vice presidential candidate in the socialist ticket in 2016. She ran as a socialist sheriff in 2014 against David Clark. If you don't know who he is, he's that crazy dude on Fox with the cowboy hat and the really trimmed, dyed black goatee. And he's supposed to be a Democrat, so why he's on Fox all the time, I have no idea. But anyway, I'm excited to have Angela Walker come on the show. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you. And you are out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin still, right?
I am. Well, actually, I am originally from there. I am happily relocated to Florence, South Carolina, where I've been for the last almost 3 years.
Okay. How you like it down there?
Love it.
Awesome. I moved to Austin about 5.5 years ago from Los Angeles, and I'm never moving back. If I get out of Austin, it's going to be somewhere smaller.
Yes.
I was born and raised in LA, and I don't. Every time I go back, I see my mom and stuff. I'm like, and she's like, "Are you ever going to come home?" Nope, I am never going to. Just don't get sick. You get sick, then I got to come home. Just as far as I'm concerned, just die in your sleep or something nice like that, and I can, not have to worry about moving home. So yeah, that's where I go, Angela. Just my bottom of my little dark heart. That's where I go. So it's exciting time. I mean, you are the vice presidential candidate for a major party. I mean, the Green Party is no slouch, and you guys have been around for a while now. And so let's talk about that. What are y'all's platform moving forward? I mean, obviously we've got a lot of problems in this country, and if anything, the pandemic exposed was we've been lied to by the government, lied to by the media. Turns out you can work from home for most people, right? Turns out they got money. They got $1 trillion a day to give the banks. But then they tell me they can't get rid of student loans, which is $1 trillion. So one day of bank bailouts is student loan bailouts, right? Ta-da! Right. So what are you guys campaigning on when you get out there and talk with the folks?
Our biggest thing, I think, with the entire West Coast on fire, basically right now, is climate change.
Right.
And really bringing, for people who have been able to kick the idea of climate change down, as a can, kicking it down the road, like this is not something that is urgent and immediate. I think that this brought it home in a way that nothing has in a long time.
Right.
And so we are the only party that is advocating, not only advocating, we have a whole platform around reversing climate change. And we're not talking 2050, we're talking about making immediate changes.
Right.
And making it a priority for our administration. It's like one of the first things to start work on in the first 100 days.
And not and not that watered down Green New Deal, but what y'all's original Green Deal was.
What we call the original full strength eco-socialist Green New Deal.
There you go. Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
And also, since you mentioned the pandemic, just making sure that people have Medicare for all. And not the watered down, still keeping private, big insurance and big pharma involved, but the full strength draft of Medicare for all that we came up with.
Right.
Making sure that gets implemented, and also taking steps within that to address the COVID pandemic.
Right.
One of the things, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, you can pull $1 trillion out of a hat to give the banks, but you can't use that $1 trillion to keep landlords afloat so that they're not leaning on their tenants, many of whom are unemployed.
Right.
You're not providing families a stipend through this so that they are not forced to work during a pandemic, and they're not trying to send their kids to school during a pandemic because they have to work. They're receiving money so that they can shelter in place. And, also talking about housing for all so that people can shelter in place.
Right.
So all of those things are part of our platform. And I think those pieces are immediate to right now.
Well, see, and you make a great point about the climate change component, because I'm from California, born and raised in LA. And when I was a kid, up until maybe 10, 12 years ago, we used to actually have just fire season, right? Where it gets super dry and anything would start a fire. I could tell you stories about how the major fires got started growing up there, and it blow your mind because one fire got started in the Angeles Crest because a dude caught a flat, and his rim, because he was going like 70 miles an hour downhill, and his rim started sparking on the highway, and it set the brush on the side of the road on fire. And as he pulled the car to a stop, he's calling 911 on his cell phone because within seconds he was in the middle of just fire, and that fire lasted like 3 weeks, and so now it's not even fire season. A statistic you might enjoy, or not enjoy, but just to use it. Since 2012, we have not had a month without fire in California.
I didn't know that.
For 8 years now. And now look at the entire West Coast is like on fire, right? And because we don't have rain, it's up and down drought, and then all of that. So but what you're saying about making that central to your campaign, it just doesn't seem like that or foreign policy really matters to the mainstream voter. I mean, are you seeing a different opinion of that when you get out there? I mean, do people think about that? Because to me, foreign policy is domestic policy. What we do overseas, the chickens come home to roost eventually. And you see what we're doing in Portland, so different what we're doing in goddamn Afghanistan, right? It's like, it's like, and then, last 20 years, like everyone's blaming Trump. I'm like, Obama did the same thing. Bush did the same thing. Like, so why are we, do you know what I mean? It's like, so no one challenged the Patriot Act, a total violation of the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, right? And so when you say that to the mainstream voter, they look at you like you're doing card tricks in front of a dog, to quote Bill Hicks. And so when you're out there talking to these people, are they addressing some of this to you?
Yes.
Okay.
We do a live stream over YouTube, Facebook, and I do believe Twitch. I don't know Twitch well, so I can't speak to that, but I believe we do. And we get foreign policy questions every time we live stream, every time.
Right.
And one of the things, you are exactly right. The things the violence this country perpetrates overseas is the same violence. And being that I'm Black and have been Black for 36 years in this country is something I know intimately.
Right.
These are the conditions that the community that I come out of in Milwaukee, this is what we live with.
Right.
The police in our communities are an occupying force. Right. The same as what we're seeing, overseas, where the United States is interfering. I'm not going to even say intervening. It's not intervention, it's interference.
Right.
Meddling in the way that other countries are trying to do their thing. Right. And it's simply about the theft of resources.
Right.
You have something I want, you don't want to give it up, I'm going to come take it.
Right.
And this country has gotten away with that forever. And so, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because if we really want to start healing this country, we have to be honest about the fact that the bedrock of this country, the foundation of this country, is genocide against indigenous people.
Absolutely.
It is the enslavement and theft of Africans and the continuing exploitation of African people.
Yep.
And we have to be honest about that. And the fact that we move through the world with this idea of American exceptionalism, it's okay because we do it.
That's right. That
has to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about foreign policy, and I'm talking about foreign policy to people, U.S. imperialism has to be ended. We have to stop moving through the world as the big bully with all the weapons behind us.
That's right.
And so that's a big part of our platform as well. Transforming the way that the United States moves in the world. One of the first things to do is defund the military by 75% in the wars that we are engaged in around the world, and bring those personnel and those monies home. Reinvest the monies, retrain the personnel, build the infrastructure of this country.
Well, and
stop being aggressive around the world. Well,
and you make an excellent point, because it's kind of funny when I talk to Republicans or right-leaning people, I'll quote, and last 3 years, Forbes magazine puts out 2 or 3 articles a year on the defense budget. That left-wing rag Forbes, right? And they estimated that this year it's going to be $2 trillion in the 2021 budget. When you count not what the Congress approves, quote unquote, but the covert ops, nukes, and the VA, right? $2 trillion. It's a lot of money. So why not do what you guys said? Because we could cut our military by 2/3. You know, we don't need to be in Okinawa, right? I mean, we got missiles. I could shoot a rocket up a camel's ass from Austin, Texas with what we have. We don't need to be in the Middle East.
They don't want us there.
They don't want us there. And obviously, and my dad's Palestinian. So that's where I get the name, right? So Pastor White, you know, get on about my day. Some of my cousins have a harder time because they look the part. But what I see us doing in the ME is just use, as you said, interference, not intervention. We're not getting in between two people to make peace. We're interfering. You know, we openly created slavery in Libya. Good times, right? You know, Syria. I mean, just goes on and on and on. Why? Because, you know, I'm paraphrasing Marx, but you can't expect a guy to run for the stewardship of the empire and expect him to change the empire. If you're going to run Trump or Biden or, you know, Cinderella, unless you make some fundamental changes to the system, it's a system that coughed up Trump, right? I mean, it's not, you know, everything wasn't great before January 2017, right? So like we took that $2 trillion a year, for example, to get to my question, and I apologize for ranting, but if we took that $2 trillion, for example, and knocked it down to say $400 billion a year, you know, just to have some defense, because, you know, not a perfect world, I get it. But like, could we create a jobs program in this country? Because we haven't had one in 75 years.
That's also at our platform.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that, because no one ever addresses that when I bring it up on the show, and they go, "Well, I thought about." No. It's like, you know, Howie's the only one. So it's like none of the lefty Congress guys or the libertarian Congress guys. You could put 20 million people to work right now, right? So like, let's talk about that.
And that's a big piece of the eco-socialist Green New Deal is an economic bill of rights, a federal job guarantee, the creation of a new civilian conservation corps, get people building infrastructure in not jobs that are greenwashing, but that are truly green. Right. You know, two of the big issues that are the closest to my heart are public transportation, because I was a bus driver for many, many years. Public transportation and also public schools. These are two entities that need all of the reinvestment and rebuilding of infrastructure and reimagining that we can give them. And so you have people who are, years ago, we did during the Wisconsin uprising, we did an action on a bridge in Milwaukee. And the iron workers came in their full regalia. And their banner was like, "We're ready to fix," because there was a report nationwide about the crumbling roads and bridges infrastructure in this country. People are ready to do this work. People are still ready to do this work. And it is green work. It is necessary work. And we have the money in the wars, bring those monies home, reinvest in infrastructure. And for people who are going to hear this and wonder, well, what about what? I mean, you keep, like you mentioned, you keep enough of a force that is a reasonable, credible deterrent. If you have an ally overseas, and I'm thinking of Rwanda, you know, the situation where had there been an intervention from the international, a true one, their lives could have been saved. So in, you know, acting as far as that goes, but as far as going and taking people's resources and meddling in their elections and messing with their countries, absolutely not.
Well, doesn't Russia do that? And we don't do that, right? Just the Russians meddle in elections, right? We don't do that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh no, you know, no one in Latin America would say that about, you know, they you know. Well,
they don't they sure as fuck don't bring up Israel and AIPAC, do they? You want to talk about meddling in elections? Those guys primary people. That's a fact. And they're as big as the NRA, if not bigger, because they pay for both sides, right? They buy both sides. And when you bring up this Russia crap, what pisses me off is I'm like, oh, how precious. Oh, they meddled in our democracy like it wasn't corporate bought, you know.
Did we have a democracy?
No,
because I wasn't aware of it.
No, we got a choice of detergent. You know, we got a choice of water. We got a choice of, you know, fucking vodka from like Bloody Mary. We got a choice of that shit, right? We don't have democracy. My ass. I mean, and when you bring up my little blue, I live in chewy blue Austin, right? Like the little chewy blue center of the big red hard candy of Texas, right? And almost, with few exceptions, almost all of the guys I hang out with are super corporate Dem, voting for Biden because, you know, Trump mean man bullshit, right?
Right.
And when you ask them, okay, do you know that since 1948 we've interfered in over 100 elections overseas. And the first 2 elections that Russia ever had in 92 and 96, we paid for those. We made sure that we got a vodka-soaked drunk in Yeltsin who did our thing. So let's just say the Russian thing was true. You think maybe Putin wouldn't be a little bit motivated to fuck with us after we fucked with them? You can't punch people and not expect them to punch back. And that's if it's true. I think the Russia gate to me to the left is like QAnon to the right. Okay, it's just catnip for these people to like to take a little nap and whatever. But kind of more to the jobs program again and the overseas issues. Because we got a crumbling infrastructure. You drive, so you see this stuff all the time. We got like a D+ infrastructure. We got like 60 some odd thousand bridges that need to be rebuilt, right? And you're not just hiring labor. I mean, you're hiring IT guys and engineers, accountants, computer programmer people, coders. I mean, it's an entire the entire job gamut, right?
Yes.
When you bring that up on your campaign stops when you're out, what's the response to that? What do people say?
They're generally, a lot of the people that I talk to are usually on board with the whole idea of a Green New Deal. And when I'm talking to people who are not necessarily, don't think of themselves as like environmentalists or don't think of themselves as socialists, just the idea that you will have a federal job guarantee for people who are able to work, of course,
right.
And also coupled with that is everyone has access to a living wage above poverty. Right. So you're not letting people slide through the cracks who can't work or for whatever reasons, aren't able to be a part of that. Sure. And so I think, most people they're positive about it. Most people want to see the infrastructure of this country rebuilt. There are a whole lot of people, and the issue of high-speed rail and things like that are very personal to me, because under former Governor Scott Walker in Wisconsin, we had federal money to beef up add high-speed rail. He gave it back. All of those jobs.
Wow.
He sent the money back. All of those jobs, there was a Spanish company that came into Milwaukee. The area they came into is the area that my family lives in. Complete deindustrialization. When those factories moved, that vacuum was created, that flight was created. That's right. This company came in ready to revitalize the area. This jackass gave the money back. And the states and then it was reapportioned to all the states around us. There was a sign in Chicago that said, "Thanks, Wisconsin."
Oh, really?
Because they were adding to their, yes. So this is real personal for me.
Sure. Well, and you make a point of deindustrialization. I mean, I grew up in a town called Southgate in California, like in the South LA area now. It used to be called South Central, but now they call it South Los Angeles. And because now I guess it's nicer. But in the 70s and 80s, like we had jobs there. We had like GM and Bethlehem Steel and all these places. And, when the minimum wage was like $1.25, guys are making like $8-9 an hour. You had like one guy working, could afford to support the family, all that crap.
And they were union jobs.
They were all union jobs. And so like, when those jobs went away by the mid 80s, when those jobs went away, the crime went up, we always had gangs, but they didn't go all the way down to the high school and junior high, right? We had guys that dressed like cholos and Crips and Bloods, but they really weren't. Like if you got in a fight with one of those guys, they didn't have a gun, just you got in a fight and went home, got a fat lip and that was it. But then when the jobs went away and all the ancillary businesses, if your little company puts radiators together for GM, that's what you all do. You employ like 60, 80 guys. Those jobs went away along with GM. By the late 80s, I mean, my little high school had metal detectors.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're kind of going, shit, I got out of that school 6-7 years ago. Now y'all have metal detectors, right? It's just like, so I say all that to say that that's a part that gets lost in the sauce, is how he likes to say, because what I see with people out here or people I talk to online, they're kind of what's in it for me.
Yes.
And this doesn't affect me. So, if you're voting for Trump in 2020, you're a chump. If you're voting for Biden, you're a fucking chump. But if you're voting for Trump again, you're a chump. But in 2016, I didn't really think everyone that voted for Trump was a racist, because the states he took that he effectively lied to were like Ohio, right? Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, right? States that voted for Obama twice and still got fucked. No jobs, right? Anderson, Indiana, I could rattle off a bunch of cities that are just like gone, right? Camden, New Jersey, gone, right? And so these people aren't voting because they're, even if you're lying to them, pay lip service, right? And these guys won't even do that. And so it's like that's what when I see guys like you, when I see folks like like Joe Jorgensen run around talking about actually bringing jobs back, you're kind of going, well, yeah, and that's important. And instead of telling me vote for the lesser two evils because we just got to get this guy out of the White House, I'm like, well, you're not empathizing because it ain't your kids dying in the war, and you got your goddamn health insurance, right? And you probably still have your job, even if they cut your pay 30% because of the pandemic. It's like people don't think about, I got lucky through this whole thing, right? But you got to look at people that aren't so lucky, and I've been broke. I've been big gulp broke. I've been like where I had to scrounge change in the floor of my car just to get a soda pop. So I've been up, I've been down in my life. So I can remember what that's like. I'm, oh shit, So when people are going through it and losing their place to live, like you talked about the bank moratoriums that don't exist, we gave them $11 billion in that CARES Act and didn't make an enforceable violation of law if you don't extend, like you said, to the landlords 6 months so that the landlords can have a break on their mortgage so they don't have to lean on their tenants. My complex, right? I live here in Texas in this complex kind of in the suburbs. And lately I've been seeing 2 or 3 open mailboxes every day, right? When that means they don't live there no more. And I don't know what happened. I live in a big place, but it's like, man, I'm seeing way more open mailboxes than I was seeing before, right?
And at the end of the day, what is it even for? We have and I'll be conservative with the estimate, 10 houses to every unhoused person in this country.
Yes.
Why? What is the purpose of this?
Right.
You're not winning anything by putting people in the street and creating housing instability. Right. And it goes back to what you were just saying about the industrialization and the destabilization of whole communities that happens when that happens. So does putting people in the street. Mass evictions and creating housing instability destabilizes neighborhood. And what I ran on for sheriff in 2014 is very simple. If you want to fight crime, fight poverty. Bingo. And it is still true now. Poverty is state-sponsored violence.
Yeah.
As long as you allow this to happen, you will have what we are seeing in our streets.
Right.
And I think the difference is this year, the pandemic has woken up people who were immune to certain things that were happening in communities before that. Now they're feeling it. And also the fact that you mentioned Portland earlier, that it is young white people being snatched off the streets by the state.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, whoa, wait a minute, hold up. When it was us, it was kind of easy to just kind of stand by and be like, well, they're doing this, they're doing that. But when it's somebody somebody look like you, one of your neighbors, somebody you went to school with, it hit a little different.
Well, you know what though, but not even completely, because the right wing they're still like, well, they shouldn't be out there in the first place, right? Those motherfuckers that will sit there, they'll say, oh no, don't tread on me flags and COVID protesting bullshit. But then you see protesters, freedom of speech, that's all about the Constitution. Oh no, not when you don't say something they like, right? Exactly. We still have some time. And this is probably like an entire conversation, but you ran in 2016 as on the socialist ticket as a VP, right?
Yes.
What the fuck is wrong with this country where they can't talk about socialism without just you gave them a wedgie? What the fuck is their problem? Why can't people just talk about they don't even know what it is. They don't even know what the fuck it is. It's like all of a sudden I'm saying Christmas is illegal and Jesus was an asshole because I want to have a UBI. You know what I mean? Or I want to have Medicare for all. I was like, that sounds socialist. You're going to make Christmas illegal? No, I'm not going to make Christmas illegal. I'm just it's not illegal in Sweden. It's not illegal in Norway, even though it's an oil economy.
But you know why?
I know why, but I want you to say it because you're the experty person.
Well, not really. I mean, I know what you know. I mean, folks in this country have been red baited to the point where the minute you say socialism, they get all scared. And so, what I usually do is not lead with theory because most people they glaze over.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
I define myself as an Assata Shakur and Fred Hampton socialist.
Love Fred Hampton.
put it in people's hands, make it plain, make it something that is changing their material condition.
Right.
So when I'm talking about socialism to people, I don't talk theory to them. I talk about what's currently in their life. You have a public school that you have free access to. That's socialist. You have access to a credit union. I belong to a credit union. That's socialism.
Right.
The co-ops that you are getting your food from, if you're able to be involved in that, that's socialist. And so when you do that and you stick to issues, people tend to, they relax. It's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that there should be commons, you know, for communal use, that, you know, the entities that are in your community should be publicly owned.
Right.
That you should have a stake in where you work as being a part owner of that.
Right.
And benefit from more of your labor.
Right.
When you break it down like that, then people are like, oh, okay, I can ride with that. And I'm like, yeah, I thought so.
I do that with the airports all the time. That's my best example, because airports are run by the city or the state or the county, and they just rent to United and Southwest. That's why I fly home. I had to go for a funeral in July. It cost me $120 round trip, right? And if the airlines own the airport, that trip would have cost me $900.
Right.
But because the county, or in this case, Austin, city of Austin, owns the airport, I'm able to fly out of there cheap. They rent it to the airlines. You know, they maintain it. They hire the workers that are in the airlines, just fly in and fly out, right? They pay their little lease. The city makes money. They got the concessions in there. Those guys pay rent. So the city makes their money. Concession guys make their money. Everybody's happy, right? People fly less expensively. That's socialism. That's socialism, right? But you say that to people and they just flip out and they act like you want to, you know, like crucify Jesus again and, you know, set the founding fathers on fire. I'm kind of like, well, God damn it, man. I was like, see, and you made a good point earlier when you talked about the foundation of this country, right? Because the only, as far as I understand, the only successful slave revolt that ever happened was in Haiti against the French, the 1800s, early 1800s, 1805, I think it was. And for the first 100 years of that liberation, they had to pay 80% of their GDP to the French, right? Yeah. Now, could you, for loss of assets, right? Because they lost slaves. Could you imagine if the U.S., the first 100 years of this country, we had to pay reparations to the British for loss of income? That didn't happen. We got free land. We got free labor, right? We built this entire economy on the backs of everybody that came here. You know, even the Chinese and the Poles, we brought them here, and you know, that's why unions got started, because they're going, hey man, I'm getting fucked. But all that to say, when you get out there and you discuss these theories, does anybody ever like try to spin it back on you and go, well, that's socialist, and then they're against what you're saying, or do they vibe with your common sense?
They vibe with that.
Okay.
I have very seldom, I can't remember actually an incident where someone was like, oh, well, you know, gave me pushback. Once I told, you know, you start breaking it down like this, and this, and this. And then they're like, oh, okay. I didn't think of it like that. I didn't, you know, and then they'll explain, you know, every time I've heard someone say socialism, it's been in a bad way. And I'm like, do you ever question why that is?
Right.
So then that just leads into that conversation. But I have not received pushback from the people that in the circles where I talk to people about, and these are people who are not, you know, theorists. These are not, you know, these are not people who consider themselves to be political, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And so when you bring it to them, they don't, I haven't had pushback from them.
Good. Okay. That's cool. I mean, and that's the thing that I've been changing my language the last couple of years. Like instead of, because I think we should nationalize the banks. I think we should nationalize, you know, the medical system with Medicare. So instead of saying that, I don't use the word nationalize, because then, you know, it sounds like I'm Castro or something. So what I started saying was we should utilize the banks, because we got a failed banking system. We have the best healthcare system in the world with no access to it. You know, I belong to a healthcare co-op because my day job, I'm 1099, I'm commission only, right? And Obamacare, good times, was like $700 with an $8,000 deductible. I'm like, ooh, are you out of your mind? So I joined this health share. I won't name the name, and I joined this health share program, and it's $250, and it's a $750 deductible. And guess what? God forbid something happens, cancer or whatever, I got $1 million in case I get cancer or a major car accident, right? I'll email you the info if you're interested.
It's pretty amazing.
Off mic, yeah. And you got and in health share, you got to do a little bit of homework because, you know, not everybody takes it. right?
Right.
So that kind of thing. But for that little inconvenience, like, I got to find the doctor that takes. But for that little inconvenience, I'm not paying $700 a month. Paying something that's about my car payment, right? Something that I can afford. I got turned on to it by a buddy of mine in California. He's paying $1,200 for his entire family of 5.
Wow.
On Obamacare, how much would that be? And that's another thing you made a point about Medicare for all. We just kicked 27 million people off their health insurance because they lost their jobs. And what's the goddamn Democrat solution? Well, they can get ACA. No, dude, they don't have a job, dipshit. They don't have a job. How are they going to pay for ACA when they don't have a job? And it's
ACA.
yeah, man. And you say that, and you get these people, their little anecdotal stories. Well, I got my blood pressure medication because of ACA. Great, good times. Get sick, and it's $8,000 a year, by the way. So you got to be $8,000 worth of sick this year, and then the clock resets, and then you got to spend another $8,000 before they kick in. And so if you got an illness, like cancer or something like that, it's gonna, like say 18 months, you're gonna be in the whole 20, 30 grand minimum before it's all said and done. Right? Most people bankrupt for that. And that's why we had 1 million bankruptcies last year because of medical reasons. And those people had health insurance. My brother's an MD, and he'll tell you flat out, Medicare's not the sexiest money, but you know what he never gets from Medicare? A recension letter where they say, hey, oops, sorry, that stint you put in that guy's heart was experimental, but we miscoded it. So you owe us $85,000. So my brother's clinic now has to go back to Joe Smith and say, hey, man, your insurance denied it, so you owe us $85,000. He either BKs or he gets on a $300 a month plan. So when is that clinic going to ever get their money? Never. Because $85,000 and $300 a month, $200 a month, when are you going to pay that back? Especially if the guy's like my age, he'll make maybe 20 years worth of payments and then be dead.
Or he's not well to begin with, and he's probably on a fixed income.
Absolutely. And so these recension letters, like Aetna does it, the Blues do it, United Health do it. And so my brother's telling me flat out, he goes, I get those every month. And I had 2 or 3 friends in the last several years that had issues where their payments got denied after they were approved for. They had to take equity out of their house to pay the bill, right? Like that's part of the retirement. Gone now, right? So that's where I get so angry when people give me this shit about how great, or he tried, and this baby step bullshit. That is such a white privilege. That's such a white privilege fucking thing. When people tell me about incrementalism, which they use a lot out here in Austin, right? With the medical thing, they say incrementalism. I'm like, let me tell you about American incrementalism. You said American exceptionalism a couple minutes ago. Mm-hmm. This is American incrementalism. Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. Mm-hmm. And then we waited another 100 years for the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act in 1965. And we're still lynching black people until like last week.
Thank you.
So like that's incrementalism. You can afford incrementalism. When everyone's bitching at LeBron James because they're going on that strike. And when one of my buddies online I went to high school with, they go, he's rich, he's got security. What's he worried about? I go, you know what? He needs his wealth. He needs his fame and his security to live like I do every day. That's what you're not getting. You have to have LeBron James's money to go on about your day like I do. And
even then, it might not save you.
That's right. That's right. And so that's that. And so when people want to ignore that and act like everything's great, like the other day, Thursday Night Football with the Chiefs and I forgot who they played, and they did that in the Texans. They did this little unity thing. They didn't take a knee. They just walked out arm in arm. And they didn't take a knee. The anthem played, and some of the Texans stayed in the locker room. And then they all walked out in the middle of the field. I forgot for Pledge of Allegiance, something. So it was a unity thing, right? And they got booed. And I'm like, you fucking toddlers. These are the people that tell me I don't have a problem. And James Baldwin said this: the psychosis of this country comes from the fact that the United States cannot reconcile its ideals with its sins. That is the problem we have. It's like we have a drinking. It's like we're the adult children of alcoholics, man. It's like, no, my daddy just beat me because I didn't get him his medicine fast enough. It's like, dude, like that's the toddler party. You know what I mean?
And it also goes back to what you said earlier about people speaking about the individual currently occupying the White House as this is, oh my goodness, he's so bad, and just bringing it to people like, baby, the conditions in my community predated him. That we've always gotten the hell kicked out of us.
Right.
This pandemic has opened the door for people that, like the ones that you're referencing right now.
Right.
Now things are starting to touch them, and it's like, oh wait, what is this? But and they don't understand or choose not to understand that there's a whole lot of communities in this country. This is how it's been for us every day.
That's right.
Every day.
That's right. That's right.
So
I got a buddy. I got a buddy out here that I golf with. He's about my age, you know. We share the same birthday. Black guy, cool dude. I know him for 3 or 4 years since I lived here. Golf, you know, drives a Lexus. He makes a lot of money. His wife makes a lot of money. And, you know, he gets stopped every few weeks going through his neighborhood because the cops just want to make sure he lives there, you know. I'm like, really? You can't just look at the guy in the eye, see how he's dressed, how he talks to you? Like, what do you think he's like? What is he, like some gangbanger? Like, really? He's like a middle-aged, middle-class, jobby job guy. You know, just mind his own business. He's got golf clubs in the backseat of the car, hanging out with us, drinking, talking shit. And I don't get stopped at all.
He's a black dude in a nice car.
Bingo.
We're not supposed to have that kind of stuff.
Right. They check his ID, you know.
To have those things.
Right. And then we do have a systemic problem. And you look at, you know, the failure of enterprise zones. You look at redlining it with the banks. I mean, on and on and on and on. And unless you address that, and I'm not talking about, you know, fucking
wearing kente cloth and kneeling.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, yeah, that was fucking hilarious. That was like, you know, that was like, okay, there's a book by a guy named Danny Hyphon called American Exceptionalism. And I had him on the show about 1.5 years ago. And he had a line in this book, crack me the fuck up. Like, so, you know how they always talk about how all the women CEO or all the defense contractors have women CEOs. And the example he says, he goes, you know, that's like complaining about the ethnocentric hiring practices of the mafia. You know, it's like, well, they're finally getting people of color to be made men there now. It's not just the Italians, you know, it's not just white Italian people. They got like Don Cornelius now and Don, you know, Corleone. It's like, it's so fucking stupid. And the kente cloth, I read this article a couple weeks back. You know, that pattern that they had, that pattern belonged to the largest slave trading tribe in Africa at the time, selling the most slaves to the United States and Europe. And that's the one. That's the fucking one they picked. These guys can't do anything right.
But no, perfect.
Yeah, right?
That's the only one they should have been wearing.
Right, there you go. Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's the thing, that to your point, I'm not talking about, you know, changing the Washington Redskins football team name, crap like that. I mean, fine, do it.
That's important, though.
It's important.
I'll just say that.
Yeah, it is. But you don't want to just give a facelift, right?
No.
Tear down, knock down some statues. Columbus was a prick. Okay, so it's like he got called home in 1500 because Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand go, "What the fuck are you doing over there?" And they put him in jail. So it's like, you know, we got to remember he was a prick. You know, he discovered America. No, he didn't discover America. We tell that lie all the time. He didn't discover fucking America. Our amigo Vespucci was here 100 years before him. So it's like on and on and on, right? But if you're going to protest, you got to make it stick. You got to do what the French have been doing every weekend for almost 2 years now. You know, they're getting their way. You know, it's like, you're gonna tax our pensions? No, you're not. Protest. You know, you're gonna take away our Medicare? No, you're not. Protest. You're gonna raise our gasoline taxes to make up for the tax break you gave your buddies? Protest. You know, we can't just let it stop, and we can't let them, like, for example, BLM, my concern with them is they're gonna get co-opted if they're not careful by the Democrats.
Black Lives Matter as a movement they're aware of that.
Yeah, I hope so.
They're very aware of that.
See, because that's what we do in this country, right? We like you're a rapper 1 minute, and then you're pushing McDonald's the next minute, right?
Woo!
Dude, I'm an old man. I remember Chuck D. Okay, I say Chuck D now. Kids are like, "Who?" I'm like, "Dude, come on." But yeah, it's like that's what we do in this country. We see a thing and we co-opt it. You know, we did that.
We make it not a threat.
That's right. We take the teeth out of it.
We defang it, and when we can't defang it, we kill it.
That's right.
Which is what happened with Fred Hampton.
I was going to say yes, miss.
Panthers, the ones you can't defang. Look at Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Yep.
When you can't defang it, you kill it or you incarcerate it. That's what you do.
That's right. Oh, that's right. And that's the challenge to address. I don't want to, you know, make people feel better. You know, I want to talk about this and get more people on a mass to accept what's going on. You're not going to get a change unless you accept there's a problem. And
admit it. And own it, that we are all to some degree complicit in the way that this country has done the things it's done. And even those of us who are members of the most marginalized groups in this country are made complicit by way, you know, via our citizenship here in the crimes this country commits overseas.
Right.
So we have to own that. You know, my taxes help pay for the assassination of Gaddafi and the trashing of his country. my taxes help pay for that.
Right.
I am part of that. Right. And so I think that it's not just recognizing our part in this, but it's also owning it. And that is so hard for so many people.
Yeah, no, it is. And you're right. Well, hey, listen, we're kind of wrapping up here, and I know you got things to do. You're a busy lady, and your weekends are, dedicated to running for office, and then you still admirable that you're working. That's, no, I'm on the campaign trail. It's so hard. Like you actually have a day job, and then you're doing this. Is there anything you want to kind of leave the people with as we kind of wrap it up? What are your thoughts going into November, and what do you think? I mean, you all going to go to the Free and Equal events coming up, right? In New Mexico. I think Howie's going to be in the presidential debate there. But is there a VP debate for that kind of thing, or what are y'all doing?
I have to ask my assistant. I'm like in La La Land when it comes to stuff like that. It's work, and then it's like, okay, let's do this.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing that I want people to be aware of is just don't accept the lesser evil. Mm-hmm. If that's not what's serving you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of highly justified fear of retaining that individual in the White House. I get all that. But I want people to not forget the conditions we're facing predated him. Mm-hmm. He didn't bring that stuff in. Mm-hmm. And if you have to hold your nose and cast your vote, if you're not okay with that, then you don't have to do it that way. Right. There are choices. We're out here. There's the libertarians. There's a whole lot of other folks that folks can find a home with. Right. And also I want people to stay safe. There is still a pandemic happening. Mm-hmm. We might be over it, but it ain't over. Mm-hmm. So I need people to just stay safe.
Awesome, man. Well, Angela, thank you so much for coming on. You've been a total treat, and I'm really glad you accepted my invitation, and I look forward to talking to you some more.
And, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you. And guys, as we wrap up, my guest has been Angela Walker. There's going to be links to their campaign on in the body of the show. And again, patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. You can also listen to the show for free on Spotify, iTunes, and everything else. We also appreciate support to the show. But again, guys, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.